Hey guys, welcome back to Talon Knives. This video, throwing knives. Alright, very fun subject. Well, I've been out throwing a little bit lately, and I've noticed that some of my knives have been wearing out. So, got plenty of steel here. We're going to be making some more throwing knives today. And I want to do this video because I was asked on what type of knives I use and how I make them. Alright, well, to start this video off, I'm going to give you guys a quick brief talk on my design and why I use it. And then we'll get right into it, into the making knives. We're going to cover all the tools we're going to need for it, and then we'll start making the knives. Alright? Okay, so this is my personal design, and this is what I just really enjoy using, and this is the knife we'll be working on today. So, now just real quick, the overall length is 10 inches. Now the reason I chose that length is most people would recommend for the distances I throw, which is in between about 10 and 20 feet, they'd recommended me a 12 to 14 inch knife. Well, I tried it, and they work, but for the purposes I use it for, which is self-defense, a 14 inch knife isn't what I would consider a low profile knife. So I went with something a little bit smaller, which is about 10 inches, which works absolutely fine for the distances I throw. Because even though I can throw from 25 and 30 feet, I usually don't practice from that distance. When we're having fun and we try to push ourselves a little bit farther in our skills, we'll go back farther. But when the day's all said and done, I practice 90% of the time between 10 and 20 feet. So that's due to the length of it, so it holds a low profile and it still works for the distance I throw. Also, as you can see, there is no handle on the knives. You see a lot of knives on the market today. They either have like a paracord handle, or they have these plastic handles or wooden handles, and that's very good. Some people do prefer them. I think it's just a lot easier to get a grip on them. I personally don't like them, and also going back to having a low profile knife, because if you are carrying a knife for self-defense, you're not going to want a big bulge coming out of your pocket or under your shirt or in your coat. You want to keep it extremely low profile. So, and this is very flat, it's 3/16 inch thick, 10 inches long. You're able to keep this on a low profile basis. Okay, so, and I've thrown with handles before, and I just really enjoy having it all one piece. It's a lot easier to make, and it's one less step you have to worry about in the process. Alright, and then as you can also see, how I kind of dipped it in here at the handle and then bubbled it back out at the end, and that's just simply to help you get a much better grip on it, so the knife does not slip out of your hand too early. You just have a little bit more control over the knife. And then also, as you can see, there is no blade on either side, and that is simply because I cut myself enough in the shop, and I don't need to be cutting myself out there when I'm throwing. So, I personally do not like the blades. I do not recommend them. They really do not give you any advantage while throwing. Maybe if you're starting out as a beginner, the knife might stick into the target a little bit easier if it does have a sharp blade. But then again, if you are a beginner, I would not recommend throwing with a razor sharp blade, just in the event that it does bounce back at you and you can't move in time. So I never recommend the blades. I do not like them too much. I just go and I taper it off into a sharp tip. But as I said, the design itself is very simplistic. So that's what it is, and that's the design I really like using. So as you can see, I drew the design out, and what we'll be doing is we will be cutting that design out, and we will be taking our bar stock here. We'll be taking our bar stock, we'll be putting the design on the bar stock, and we'll be taking a black permanent marker to trace around it, and then we'll go into cutting out the knives and then doing the rough shaping of them with a grinder. Okay, so let's move on then. Alright, so before we actually move into the building of the knives, I wanted to cover real quick the tools we'll be using for it. And then first and foremost, we have our 4x36 belt sander here. It's one of the smaller ones I have. I'm using it today just because it's a little bit more portable, and it's also not too big of a project, so we'll be using that one instead of setting up my big boy. So we're going to be using that, and then we also have our 4.5 inch angle grinder, and make sure you have the cutting blades for it. I have the 1/8 inch cutting blades, so we'll be using those to primarily just cut and rough shape the knives. And then, of course, we're going to need a way to heat treat and temper them. Now, sadly, my propane forge is out of commission because we were having some problems with the burners, so we're fixing that now. But until that's all taken care of, I have to fall back to one of my old fire bricks, and I'm not happy about it because it takes a lot longer. So, but it will work just fine, and if you have a fire brick, it's definitely a cheaper way to go. And if you don't, you can pick them up for a few dollars. They're pretty simple to run and operate. So we'll be using a fire brick, and we'll be using, of course, the smaller tank of propane. Then, as far as safety goes, absolutely without a doubt, because we'll be grinding, we're going to be wearing safety glasses at all times when we're using the machinery. Okay? And then also, another safety thing is because with the grinder and the sander, I was stupid when I was a little bit younger, and I would try to play it tough without using gloves, and I would grind away all my knuckles right here on the rear wheel. So from now on, we're going to be wearing gloves. You got to do it. It's smart play, unless you really don't like having skin on your fingers, because you'll take your skin right off, and it sucks. So another thing, since we're going to be grinding, it's going to be kicking up a lot of odors and fumes, and it's going to be kicking metal powder in the air. We're going to be using a breathing mask when we're doing the grinding. And then also, it's not necessary, but I do recommend it. Getting yourself a leather work apron if you don't already have one, or just some work apron in general. You could go and just use a heavy pair of work pants, maybe a long sleeve shirt, but I mean, I have it available to me, so it's just I'm going to keep my work pants in good condition, so I'll be wearing that apron as well. Alright, so that covers all the tools we'll be needing outside of just some pliers and some stuff here and there. That covers everything, so we can go ahead and move on with the knife making. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken my paper design, I've cut it out, I've laid it on the steel, and I've traced it with a permanent marker. Alright, so once that's done and you got all your designs on the bar stock, you're going to want to come in, we're going to cut the excess metal there at the end. Then we're going to go and we're going to separate the knives by cutting here and here. So that's going to separate the knives. They're all going to be separate pieces. Once we have that, we're going to be taking each individual knife, and we're going to be cutting as much as we can off, as much stock as we can off the tips and the back using the angle grinder. Okay, what that is going to do for us is that's going to give us the rough shape of the knife, and it's also going to make our grinding on the belt grinder a lot less strenuous. Okay, so we have our first knife cut out then, and we're going to cut out the rest here then, and then I'll show you what we're going to do about the excess stock. Okay, so as you can see, we cut all the knives to separate pieces. We have the extra stock just laying off to the side. So now what we're going to do, push those over a little bit. So we're going to come in, we're going to do probably 2 cuts so we can get the advantage of this curve here. We'll be cutting there, and then we'll do another small cut here, and the same thing on the other side. So now we're going to flip it around. We'll start on the back side. Okay, so now as you can see, we went and we cut away at the tips, at the backs, and now we're going to start moving on to the actual grinding process to finish the overall shape and proportion of the knife. Okay, so but now as you can see, there's not nearly as much to grind away, and it should go pretty quick now. So I just put on a new 36 grit belt onto the sander, and we're going to start grinding.